here for a beautiful day before Thanksgiving because I thought it'd be really interesting to get to know the authors of the great people that are writing for our holiday edition of the Next Taste magazine. And with us today, we have Robert Mills coming to us from California, out there where he's among the loves of his life, not only his wife, but tall peaks everywhere. So good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Randy. Delighted to be with you. As
Well,
always.
I'm happy to have you too. I mean, it's been, the article itself has been fascinating a lot of people. So I thought I'd take a few moments right before Thanksgiving to get to know you. And actually Art Strickland is going to be doing a feature. And as we go through the weekend, I'm going to try to pull everybody into the magazine to hear the history. But that article you wrote, I've known Robert for well over 50 years. We both graduated from Freeport High School. We're officially Pretzels. That's our moniker. But Robert went to, I went to golf where I could ride in a cart. He went the opposite direction. He was a noted attorney, worldwide esteem. And then from there, he decided to get into some different areas of his life because his dad taught him how to go out and go for a little walk here and there. But anyway, he's been climbing mountains. How many of the tallest peaks have you climbed so far, Robert?
Well, I've climbed hundreds of mountains in 5 continents, and I set about 6 or 8 years ago to climb all of the 57 quote ultra prominent peaks in the United States, continental United States. Those are peaks that are 5,000 feet from the base to the top. They're not the highest; they're just the biggest. The 57 biggest peaks, 5,000 base to top, and I got them all but one.
Which one are you missing?
I'm missing the Grand Teton, and I'm missing it kind of on purpose because you have to get a permit way in advance. You have to get these guides, and it's. Do you remember those pictures of Mount Everest? We see 300 people in a line,
right,
up to the top, dropping rocks on each other. That's kind of what it's like at the Grand Teton. So I decided that maybe I'll just have that as an asterisk, and I'll go out and climb other peaks.
Well, we'll let it go at that. We'll say that. You've accomplished huge feats, something that will never happen in my life. But what occurred to me is in looking at the pictures, that one picture where we have the double page spread.
Yes.
It appears that you're standing on the top of a mountain. Is that true? Is that what that's?
I'm at the top of a mountain. It's called the Enclosure. That's a strange name. The reason they call it that is because there's 8,000-year-old Native American structure on the top of it. And it's a 5th class peak, Randy. You got to climb vertical walls to get to it. It's right behind the Grand Teton. I mean, you look right over and there's the Grand Teton. So it's the 2nd highest in that park. And you go up there and they have no idea how these Native Americans got up there and built this thing on top of it.
Really?
And so I went up and saw it and climbed the enclosure, and it is a vertical peak, and you're standing up and you see I've got a harness and a helmet, and it's a 5th class peak where you go right up the vertical rock for thousands of feet.
Good Lord.
Wonderful climb. I was right there at dawn. You see how that light there? That was we climbed at night, to avoid rock fall from ice, and we got to the summit right at dawn.
So when you climb that, and you get to the top and you have that moment of satisfaction, do you have one foot on one side, one foot on the other, and say, you're mine, I've got you, you have them tap out, how does that work?
Well, it's just a wonderful feeling to be at that spot where everything, as far as you can see, of course, in this case, except for the Grand Teton across the way, but everything in most directions is far, far below you. And it's just an amazing experience. The sun has come up and, the wind is blowing, and you just have this feeling of being in nature, and it puts you in this immediacy with the universe. And it's an incredible feeling. It's an incredible experience to have gotten there. In addition to the sense of accomplishment, and I hired a guide because I'm not a youngster anymore, and this was a very technical climb. So he went ahead of me and put up protections, and I had to climb it. But having the guide there means that there was if I fell, I would be caught by the rope. So you climb it just the same as you would have if you didn't have a rope and you didn't have a guide, but it just gives you the protection knowing if you slip and fall, you're not going to die.
So when you get, now you're at the top and now you have to start heading down, how long is that road, or not road, climb, declimb? I don't know, what would you call that? A descension?
It's a descent. Descents are much easier and faster. And the reason is because you can rappel. And when you stand back up on the rock and put your feet up in the air and rappel down, and you can just zoom down, just kick out from the rock and slide down, and you can control it with your hands and through your fingers. You've got these leather gloves on, and just let the rope slide through there, control your descent, and it's really easy to get down. It's fast, much faster than going up.
I can
For
imagine.
that reason.
Now you don't get all the way down to the base, though. You have another.
No, you have to do in pitch. We call pitches. You
Uh-huh.
go only as far as your rope. When you bring 150 or 200 feet of rope, and you go down to a ledge, and then you set up again, you go down again, and you can do it pretty quickly. And you've already got some protections in there in most cases. So you just hook into that, throw your head back, and down you go.
Are there a lot of artifacts from prior climbs that people have that are things that are in like that would hold your ropes? I mean, I don't know.
Well, there used to be a lot of that, because back in the day, people used pitons. When they would bring a hammer, they would pound something into the rock. And what happened was the pitons did a lot of damage to the rock. They scratch it and they pulverize the rock. And then when people would take them out, and then the next guy would go to use it, and it would be a bigger crack. And pretty soon it was too big to even use. So there grew this revulsion against pitons, and it was considered unethical. They were considered destructive, and so people used other means. Now you can buy these little devices that will expand and fit the crack and lock into the crack, and they don't do any damage to the crack. So you can go up and down the mountains without damaging them now with this new equipment. And that's pretty much what so people take it with them because it's expensive. But in the old days, you could go up and see these pitons, and sometimes there's still pitons there. And some of these, they're 40, 50 years old.
So you still had a night do you have to spend on the mountain itself? I mean,
yes,
you're going to be in a tent. And
yeah, you leave the parking lot, and it's a long climb, 7 or 8 miles up to this pass between the Middle Teton and the Grand Teton. And there's a little hut there, and you spend the night in the hut. And COVID raises some interesting challenges. You have to bring a tent or something. But when I climbed, which was pre-COVID, they put 30 people, like little puppies, all piled in there in their sleeping bags in this little hut. And then you get up at 2 a.m, and they give you some coffee, and you put on your stuff, and off you go. And then some go to the Teton, and others, just me alone, actually. I was the only one doing the enclosure. And so my guide and I take off, and we go up to the enclosure, and then he puts, we start up that vertical face up, and then we did the enclosure.
So when you're now going to be enjoying whatever dinner in your sleeping bag and tent, what are we enjoying as a satisfying celebration dinner?
Well, it's all dehydrated naturally, because you can bring it up there, and I like freeze-dried turkey tetrazzini. I celebrated 9 Thanksgivings in a row up on a ledge someplace, having freeze-dried turkey tetrazzini, and you can have, there's just a wide range of things: beef stroganoff and noodles and all kinds of things, and you have some nice hot tea, and you bring some dried fruit, and maybe you try to avoid chocolate at night because it keeps you up. But in the morning, I make myself this concoction I bring of Vietnamese coffee, or I have very different types of coffee. I have Cho chocolate. It's a artisan chocolate made in Berkeley, and carnation malt. The old stuff we used to have as kids, and I mix it together, the 3 of them, and I call it the concoction. And people that have climbed with me have fallen in love with it. You have 1 cup of this, and you can just take off of mountains. You have 2 cups, and you can fly. You can, flap your hands and
easy way down.
Yeah. Yes, it's so I have that. Look for that in the morning, but at night, I have tea.
Are you taking enough water along with you, or melting snow, or how does that?
Well, in most cases, water is becoming a problem out here now because of the drought, and there are a lot of these mountains, there is no water on the mountain. And so you have to bring it with us. My son and I went and we climbed Dry Mountain, which is an interesting name. It's in Death Valley. It's like it's the 4th highest peak in Death Valley, and it's about a 15-mile hike. There's no water, so we put these big backpacks on, and we filled our big water things, 1.5 liters each. Then we put 4 1-gallon jugs of water we bought from the grocery store in the bottom of the pack. and we took off, and that's a little heavy, actually.
That's a lot of, well, a gallon weighs about 8 pounds. I mean,
yeah, it was 4 gallons each.
Yeah.
And it, we went up all day and set up a base camp way high up on this ridge. And then the next day you have to actually go over a ridge, down another mountain, and back up to get to Dry Mountain. We made it back to that base camp, spent the night, plenty of water, and got back to our car with a little bit left over.
Well, let's just cover this. We just got about 8 to 10 minutes to go here. And we've got a couple things I want to talk about. Your wife is a very big, important part of your life and agrees to all these adventures. And she's flown along with you upside down or sideways. I mean, we've had a conversation about your South American flight, which we'll talk about some other future insert into the magazine. But she's quite a part of what you do, right?
Is. And when I go mountain climbing, and she so very generously encourages me to do it, I sign each summit register. All these mountains have summit registers, and I sign all of them. Robert Loves Miriam. There's 200 Robert Loves Miriams. I just signed one the other day. Robert Loves Miriam, and we have different things. We have she loves culture stuff. She takes me to symphonies and opera and theater and she loves international adventure. She loves going out where there's these places where the natives are outside the modern culture, which means no cell phones, no motorcycles, and they live out. And so we've gone to those places in all kinds of, wilderness, Tanzania and Myanmar and Angola and, and Namibia. Namibia was one of the most interesting ones. They live. We went out with a guide. She'll get a guide because you can't have the cultural experience without a guide. We get a guide. This guy had a PhD actually from someplace, and he spoke English and he spoke the native, and he would take us in these huts. It was the most remote. We stayed in the most remote camp in all of Africa.
Robert, we're going to have to. Okay, so next month, here we go. You and your wife are going to co-author that story. Because I want to get back on this story. We only got about 6 minutes, and we're going to tease them a little bit with that because there's also a part of you taking your daughter along and going face to face with anything else other than a lion. Possibly?
It was a lion. It was a. We were in Tanzania on a guided tour in a Jeep, and we turn around and here comes this great big huge lion. I mean, a huge lion, and everybody and the guide said, "Just don't move. Just don't move. You're safe in the Jeep. Just don't move." And so she's sitting there, and this gigantic lion comes, almost sniffs her face. You can look over and smell his breath. He's like feet away from her, and then he just turns around and walks away. Oh, thank God.
So if you don't think we're not going to have some great stories. And truly remarkable. Now, you mentioned in one of our shows that you've flown your own plane over 1 million miles somewhere.
Yes, I over 1 million miles. I had, I mentioned that in the article. We had got together with 3 other couples that had 3 other planes, and we flew in this little swarm. We went down the west coast of South America all the way to Ushuaia, which is an island south of Magellan Strait. It's the southernmost airport in the world. Landed there, did all kinds of adventures, and then came up the east coast of South America, stayed in all the major cities, went to the capitals, got guides, and did the cultural tours, spent the night in castles and stuff, and these 17th century Spanish homes, and toured everything, and ended up at Angel Falls. That's the one I went through the thunderstorm and the Amazon, lost that. We saw Angel Falls, and we went up the Windward Islands up in the Caribbean up to Florida, and then we came back from Florida.
So again, 2 months down the road, we'll get that going. And we've been to Morocco, which is another fascinating story. I think you've alluded to in the past.
My brother has a house there.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to save some of this. I'm just going to get some highlights. I don't want to get back to one more thing. The other thing, the history of San Francisco. You live out in that area. Which I think would be worth a huge expose, because the culture, how the Russians and the Native Americans and the history of that whole area fits together. We've talked about a lot. Again, that's going to be in a future topic of discussion, how boats are buried below Transamerica building. I don't know. I mean, it's another.
There's hundreds of gold rush ships full of treasure still under the city.
And why not? but right now, just to wrap this up about your flying, one of the great things that you do is that you still fly, and you're doing some things to help some vets. Is that right?
Well, for a while, for 22 years, I did angel flights where we take indigent cancer patients from remote rural places in the US and fly them to the metropolitan centers where cancer and other treatments are. And we would do it for free. And me and thousands of other pilots do these. It's still being done all over the country, called angel flight. And for a while, they stopped it later, but because they were shamed into it. But for a while, the US military would not fly injured vets home from their assigned bases for Thanksgiving or Christmas. So Angel Flights jumped in, and we would take these injured vets and fly them home for free. And
Wow.
I had some great experiences, which I mentioned in the thing, doing this, taking these poor guys home. It's very rewarding. They're wonderful young men. And my son was in the military, and he would bond with them and sit in the back and they'd talk. And it was fabulous.
Oh, it's just terrific. And just as an aside, you just got back from Hawaii.
Yes.
And took your family over there for a few days. Did you go see any of the active volcanoes? And
we did.
Yeah.
I took a helicopter and I went over what's it, Wailea, not Wailea. It was the one that's just on
Right.
Mauna Loa.
Yeah.
And it was actually actively emitting lava. It wasn't throwing it way up into fountains in the air, but you could see it bubbling up. It was bright red and oozing. And it was, and then we went around on the helicopter tour and saw those huge waterfalls on the eastern side. It's an incredible island. I love that island, especially the eastern part, in the northern part there, where it's isolated, it's wilderness. And there's a few little resorts, and you can just go off into the lava, and and you can swim there. And I love that part of it. And I love the volcanoes too. And I think I wrote a story, one of your articles, about the volcanoes.
Yeah, it's a whole amazing culture. And then our good friend Bob Aldrich, he and his Judy, she put together a lengthy trip up in the Northwest, sort of in the Mount St. Helens area, and they had quite an adventure here a couple months ago. I have to admire both you guys. All three of us are the same age, 27. Wait a minute, I think I got those numbers back.
Well, it feels 20. I look in the mirror. It's
Now,
who is?
I started working out again to play competitive golf over the past month, and you guys are in such great shape, and I'm just a golfer. And I realize now, I went out and did a workout yesterday that I found it out at the Y that I did when I was in my 40s. So I decided to go do it just to see what would happen. I thought I was going to have to call an ambulance about an hour later. I was paralyzed, but I feel good today. I'm going to go back and do it again. I mean, I did it and survived. And, I'm just I just admire the shape you have to be in to do what you're doing. But everything that you've done as a person, and, you and your wife having put this whole bond together to just lead an amazing worldwide life. We expect it to be more stories every month in the Next Taste magazine. This is the holiday edition. Robert's on our weekly show called The Next Taste, but I love these little one-on-one interviews. I think they're much more meaningful, and you're going to be right in there. You can sit and read the article, and then you can go right to the page that everybody has found and see Robert and our authors and get to know them a little bit personally. So, Robert, I appreciate everything you do, and you have a great Thanksgiving. It is Thanksgiving weekend. We have a lot to be thankful for at our age.
We do.
But we're that healthy. We want to say hi to all our Freeport Prets, peeps back in Freeport that follow us along the way, and we're always thinking of them and as we go forward. But anyway, God bless you. Have a great day. Have a great, wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you next week.